Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are, and welcome to Richard's Rock Rambles, the channel where we look at all things rock related, the band lineups, the different genres. We cover prog, we cover blues, metal, hard rock, blues rock, jazz rock fusion sometimes. You name it, we cover it. So we're going to finish off today with our live albums we've been doing for the past couple of episodes, quite a few actually. And we're going to finish off today with one of my favorite artists of all time, a gentleman who's sadly no longer around. He passed away in 1991 because he had prostate cancer. Didn't win that battle, unfortunately. Yeah, we're talking about Frank Zappa. Now, with Frank Zappa, you either like him or you don't. There's very little middle ground there. And I've been a convert since, years ago. I mean, I'm a massive collector of his stuff. I've got a lot of his records. I've got CDs. And I haven't even, it's a drop in the ocean. His discography is huge. There's been a lot of live stuff released when he was alive. Sometimes as part of his studio album. It was interspersed with live tracks, which made it quite interesting. And since his passing, there have also been many albums that have been released. I think from Gail, when she was still around. She's also passed away, his wife. And the Family Trust, they keep releasing these albums. And the one thing with Zappa, no matter what he released, it was top quality. I mean, this guy was an absolute perfectionist, whether it was in the studio or whether it was out on the road. If you were in his band, you had to know your shit. Excuse my French. But yeah, great productions. He oversaw most of the productions, most of the producing. In fact, I think pretty much all of it from day one. And he covered all kinds of genres. He covered doo-wop in the beginning. He covered blues rock. He could cover hard rock, jazz rock, a lot of jazz in his music. Different time changes. Some of his stuff was extremely hard to get hold of. To cover, especially if you were a new member of his band. His auditions were famously quite tough, and even the toughest, the best musicians found it hard. So I've cherry-picked a few of his live albums. I've got quite a few, but I couldn't do all of them, otherwise this would go on and on and on, and I'm sure you'd get tired of my face. So what I've done is I've chosen 4 albums, different periods of Zappa's career, different lineups. As I said, all very good lineups. And we're going to kick off things with an album from 1971, released in August the 2nd to be exact, 1971. And it was recorded at the Fillmore East, New York City, between June the 5th and the 6th, 1971. The famous Fillmore East, Bill Graham's venue. There was a Fillmore East and a Fillmore West, both closed down a long time ago. And like I said, it was produced by Frank Zappa. As I said, he produced most of his stuff. So this became an iconic live album that most Zappa collectors need in their collection. It took me a while to find this. A friend of mine very kindly gave me his copy. And let me show you the album. Let me take the plastic off. There we go. Very nondescript cover, a white background with sort of a scribble on it that says The Mothers, Fillmore East, June 1971. Hey, less is more, they say. And at the back, there you have the songs and the lineup. So who's in the band at this stage? So there were 2 gentlemen here who were in a band called the Turtles. They were quite a big pop band in the early 60s, late 60s. And they had a big hit with Happy Together, if you remember that track. It appears on this album on the second side. And those 2 guys were Mark Volman, lead vocals and dialogue, and Howard Kalin, lead vocals and dialogue. So this, when I say dialogue, it's kind of a comedy rock album, this. It's sort of a concept album, talks about life on the road, the groupies back in the day and what have you. It's really funny in parts. That's the one thing about Zappa, a lot of humor. Some people found it a little crass, but hey, take it with a pinch of salt, and it is what it is. So you had Frank Zappa on guitar and dialogue, Mark Volman, lead vocals and dialogue, Howard Kalin, lead vocals and dialogue, Ian Underwood on minds and keyboards and vocals. Minds, no idea what that means. Ainsley Dunbar on drums. There's another name who's drummed for everybody. early part of Journey's career, he was part of that as well. Jim Pons, bass and vocals and dialogue. Bob Harris, second keyboard and vocals. And Don Preston on Mini Moog, or Mini Moog, I think it's how you pronounce it. Moog synthesizer. Still in its early days. First used, I think, by bands like the Moody Blues. So yeah, what are the tracks on here? A Little House I Used to Live In. The Mud Shark, which is a really funny groupie story. Has to do with Vanilla Fudge and what they got up to. I always thought it was Led Zeppelin, but according to this live album, they're talking about Vanilla Fudge. So, hey, I was wrong. Yeah, so what they got up to with this Mud Shark up in the hotel room, I'm not going to elaborate on that one. What kind of girl do you think we are? Girls do you think we are? Obviously talking about groupies. Brand Dick. Dick as in D-I-K, although it's probably D-I-C-K. Latex Solar Beef. And Willie the Pimp, Part 1. That's a great track with some amazing guitar work from Zappa. Of course, you always get good guitar work from him. Then on side 2 of the vinyl, it's Willie the Pimp, Part 2. Do You Like My New Car? Happy Together, that was the Turtles track I spoke about earlier. Lonesome Electric Turkey. Peaches and Regalia, that's another well-known Zappa track which first features on his album Hot Rats. Which I'm sure if you're a Zappa collector, you'll recognize that name. And then the final track is Tears Begin to Fall, or Began to Fall. It's not a very long album. The second side is 20 minutes and the first side is 23 minutes. But yeah, as a start-off point for Zappa live albums, you can't go wrong with this one. Some excellent musicianship as well as a really funny dialogue right the way through. So there we go. That was Zappa at the Fillmore. Then we move on to Zappa in New York. And this was recorded December the 20th to the 29th at the Palladium in New York City in 1976 and released March the 3rd, 1978. Produced by, Frank Zappa. See, I've come prepared today, a big bottle. There's the cover, shot of New York. And there's a back shot of the guys playing, always big bands in the 70s. Quite a lineup. I'll go through it now. I don't know if you can see that. That's the lineup there. So there's old Frank. And that's Ike Willis on lead vocals and guitar. Eddie Jobson on keyboards and synthesizers. He also played for bands like UK or Jethro Tull. The great bassist Patrick O'Hearn. And there's Terry Bozzio. Excellent drummer, was with Zappa for quite a few years in the mid to late 70s. Then you had Tom Malone on trombone, Ronnie Cuba and Lou Marini on flute and baritone sax, Michael Brecker and Randy Brecker, the Brecker brothers on trumpet. It's the two Brecker brothers there, and there's the other guys I spoke about. David Samuels and timpani, and Don Pardo, who has like a speaking part, a narration part here, and Ruth Underwood. She's the wife of Ian Underwood, who is on that first live at the Fillmore. They both played in Zappa's band for a number of years in the early 70s. And I think that's a shot of that's Eddie Jobson, Ike Willis, and there's Frank. You can just see that trademark large nose of his and that famous moustache. And on the other side of the vinyl, you've got all the songs, and there's some classics on here. A lot of humor in this album as well. The first track is called Titties and Beer. And that's with Zappa taking the part of himself, I would assume. And Terry Bozzio takes the part of the devil, and he always had this little devil mask that he used to wear behind the drum kit. And you get all the lyrics to that. It's very, very funny. Then the second track is I Promise Not to Come in Your Mouth. Yeah, it's Zappa. That's an instrumental. There's quite a few instrumentals on here. Big Leg Emma is another one. Sofa, Manx Needs Woman. And then on side 3 is that very challenging drum piece, the Black Page. So you've got Black Page. Early morning, a lot of talking, the throat doesn't handle things. So you've got the Black Page Part 1 and Part 2. And that features Terry Bozzio with Ruth Underwood. She is on the vibes and he's on the drums. Really cool stuff. Then we have a track which is a kind of a minor hit for them, Honey, Don't You Want a Man Like Me? The best track on here for me is, it's actually a true story. A guy by the name of Michael H. Kenyon, the suspected enema bandit who terrorized co-eds at the University of Illinois for 10 years, has pleaded guilty in Urbana to 6 counts of armed robbery. He has admitted to administering enemas to woman victims in at least 3 of the 6 robberies. So this guy used to rob women and then give them an enema for whatever reason. And Frank couldn't let that go by. So he had the track, the Illinois Enema Bandit track, with some just brilliant lyrics. It's quite a long track as well. That's 12 minutes. And then it finishes off with a really long track, the side 4 of the original double vinyl, The Purple Lagoon. This is a classic. Like I've mentioned before, anybody who played for Zappa, you had to be on your toes. And these guys were all exceptional musicians, especially Terry Bozzio on the drums, Eddie Jobson, everybody. I mean, Ike Willis on guitar, Ray White on guitar, not Ike Willis. Ike Willis came a little later. And Patrick O'Hearn on bass. These guys were super sharp. Another one well worth checking out. I was actually listening to this again last night, and my wife was sitting on the other side, and I was just laughing my head off over here, and she gave me these really strange looks. Then we go on to another famous album of his from 1973, Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. That was his first band that he was together with. And this is called the Roxy and Elsewhere. So this has also been was also made into a video back in the day. You can now get a DVD of it. I think there's an extended version as well. And let's just see who's in the band here. So here we have Frank Zappa on lead guitar and vocals. George Duke played with the Crusaders as well. Keyboard, synthesizer, vocals. Tom Fowler on bass. Ruth Underwood percussion. Jeff Simmons, rhythm and guitar and vocals. Don Preston on synthesizer. Bruce Fowler on trombone, the brother. Walt Fowler on trumpet. And who else is on here? Napoleon Murphy Brock, another guy who was with Zappa for a long time, on tenor sax, flute and lead vocals. And Rolf Humphrey on drums. And Chester Thompson on drums. Chester Thompson also went on to play for Genesis, I think, for a while. So quite a lineup, quite a large lineup. Same as the previous album I spoke about. And there's some live shots of the guys. His shows were always amazing. And it could go on for like 2-3 hours sometimes. A lot of improvisation, but also very tight. You know, if it was you got on stage what you got in the studio. There was very little room for error. And there's all the lyrics as well. Another classic live album with some standout tracks. Not least the first one, Penguins in Bondage. Who else would sing a song about penguins being in bondage? Frank Zappa. Pygmy Twilight, it's another classic. Dummy Up. Village of the Sun, with some great vocals from Napoleon Murphy Brock. Enchiladas. Echidna's Art, sorry. Don't You Ever Wash That Thing? I wonder what he's talking about there. Cheapness, Son of Orange County, another great track. More Trouble Every Day. Bebop Tango at the Old Jazz Man's Church. And that's about 16 minutes. There's always some long tracks on these live albums. Don't You Ever Wash That Thing? That's like 9 minutes long. And this is part of that Ryko disc re-release that came out a few years back. Quite a few years back, in fact. I've collected quite a few on CD, but most of my Zappa is on vinyl. My favorite format, as you well know. So there we go. Roxy and Elsewhere by Frank Zappa and the Mothers. And then the last one I want to talk about is a recent acquisition, very kindly given to me by a friend who got it for me in Germany. A guy by the name of Tony Stoops. Thank you, Tony. You're the man. And this is previously unreleased from his final tour in 1988. Also an amazing lineup of guys here. And this would be the final time that he really played his guitar. Then he went into the synclaver and he sort of left the guitar behind, unfortunately. For me, Zappa was an absolute genius on the guitar. Played lead solos and the guitar unlike anybody else. You can ask Steve Vai about that. So this is called Frank Zappa, Zappa 88, 1988, the last US show. Can't even speak properly this morning. So that's the cover there. This came out last year. So this is quite a recent release. And there's a lot of tracks on here. The first disc has got 20 and the second has got 11. So what are you looking at there? 31 tracks. It starts off with, we are doing voter registration here. Zappa was very into getting people to vote. Very politically minded. A lot of his later albums dealt with politics. The Black Page, another great version of that. A new age version, it says here. I Ain't Got No Heart, Love of My Life, Inca Roads. That is such a difficult track to play. A lot of the guys who played with Zappa say that track was really hard to master. Charlena, Who Needs the Peace Corps? I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Dickie's Such an Arsehole. And I think he's talking about Richard Nixon there. When the Lie is So Big, Jesus Thinks You're a Jerk. He had very little time for these evangelists, like Jimmy Swaggart. I think that's the person he's speaking about there. Sofa, One Man, One Vote. Happy Birthday, Chad. Packard Goose. Happy Birthday, Chad. That was Chad Wackerman who was on drums. It was his birthday when this was released. Packard Goose Part 1. Royal March from Soldar. Theme from Bartok Piano. Some classical pieces thrown in here. Packard Goose Part 2. The Torture Never Stops Part 1. One of my favorite Zappa tracks. And theme from Bonanza. Hey, why not throw in the theme from Bonanza? You always got something interesting with Zappa. Then on the second disc, Lonesome Cowboy Bert. The Torture Never Stops Part 2. City of Tiny Lights. Pound for a Brown. And I think Pound for a Brown is a drug reference. The Beatles medley. There's a Beatles medley. Peaches and Regalia again. Stairway to Heaven. His version of Led Zeppelin's massive hit. Very different, obviously, being Frank Zappa. I Am the Walrus. Beatles track. The Whipping Post, which is another classic Zappa. That was originally the Allman Brothers. Bolero. Ravel's Bolero. And America the Beautiful. A lot of music on here, but it's exceptional sound quality. And the musicianship, as usual, is amazing. So who's in here? Frank Zappa on lead guitar, computer, synth, and vocal. Ike Willis on guitar, synth, and vocal. Mike Keneally on guitar, synth, and vocal. Robert Martin on keyboards and vocal. A guy with a really high-pitched voice. He could sing just about anything, Robert Martin. Ed Mann on vibes, marimba, electronic percussion. Walt Fowler on trumpet. Flugelhorn and synth. Bruce Fowler on trombone, Paul Carman, alto, soprano, and baritone sax, Albert Wing on tenor sax, Kurt McGettrick on baritone sax, bass sax, contrabass, and clarinet. Yeah, these guys are pretty sharp. And then Scott Tunis, electric bass, and Mini Moog. He was kind of, Zappa actually let him run the show on stage when he left the guitar. I think he sort of let Scott Tunis take over, and there was a bit of issues with that. And then Chad Wackerman on drums and electronic percussion. So this is it's a double disc. I'll show you. There's the other. There's a picture of Frank with his Strat. It was a Strat. Show you some of the shots. There he is again. This is towards the end of his career, so the hair's a lot shorter. But the musicianship, as always, is amazing. And there's a shot of all the guys on stage. As you can see, a lot of people there. When you listen to the stuff, everybody knows their part and they're all on point. Brilliant stuff. There he is with those rather strange looking pants. And there he is again. Another shot of Frank. What an incredible guitarist. His style was just unique. Nobody sounded like Frank. And there we are again. Scott McKittrick, I think, there on the other guitar. So there we go. This is the most recent Zappa 88, the last US show. Really worth checking out if you can get hold of it. It's available on vinyl and CD. So that was just a drop in the ocean of Frank Zappa's live stuff. I mean, I could go on forever. I'd have to have another bottle of water here. A lot of my vinyl behind me, that's Zappa. And yeah, there's lots to look for. There's a number of DVDs available as well of his live stuff. Look out for Baby Snakes from 1979. That's definitely one to check out. So we're going to leave the live stuff for a while. And the next show we do, I'm going to start looking at albums that are 50 years old this year in 2022. There's a whole bunch of iconic albums that have just turned 50. So we're going to start looking at those from the year 1972. So that'll be next time. Take it easy out there, guys. Look after yourselves. If you haven't yet, please, down below, subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. That'll be great. And yeah, I'll catch you soon. Cheers.